Right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As I've promised earlier, I will be teaching you about Keynesian economics. And instead of trying to teach you about it through PowerPoints, I have decided to teach you through this cool little software called the British Economy Simulator. It's really nothing too complicated. It's just a simple program with graphics, and yeah, we'll be using English just to brush up on your skills. And anyway, again, I'd like to say thank you for coming, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Right, so now I'll share my screen. Right, so this should be visible now on my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Right, good. By the way, you don't have to mute your mic. You can just turn it on, so you don't have to have the hassle of trying to muting and unmute yourself. So as you can see here, welcome to the Keynesian macroeconomic simulator of fiscal policy. I'm not sure what grade you are in senior high school right now, but regardless, I think this is a good opportunity to show you how macroeconomic policy can be, how we can think of it. And this is a cool, a very useful tool to understand that. Anyway, in this educational game, you will play the role of Bulgaria's newly appointed Minister of Finance. Oh, that's weird. I could have sworn the title of this is called the British Economy Simulator, and yet somehow we're assigned to Bulgaria's country. But anyway, your goal is to maintain positive GDP while also trying to avoid large budget deficits. Your tools are the effective tax rate over here and government spending over here. You are able to adjust this every 3 months. So in other words, every 1 quarter within the year, you can adjust that. When you are ready to start, click the OK button to begin simulation. Let's see here. Right. So you can look at all these graphs here and the facts. These are just, actually, you know what, before I start explaining, do you have anything to ask maybe, or do you have some things you'd like to clarify?
Maybe I have,
okay, one by one, please. So, Rehan, yeah, you can go first.
I think maybe Akang Sidik can tell us first what is this graphic about.
Okay.
Because we haven't learned in our school yet.
Any other question? Because what you asked there, I will explain anyway. So if there's anything else that maybe you want to ask after I explain what I explained earlier.
I want to ask something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this software come for free or?
Oh yeah, it's free. It is absolutely free, and
I see.
I will give you the link later.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Right then, no questions from you, Saddam?
Not yet.
All right. So now I will explain to you all these graphs and what they mean. So first of all, Keynesian economics, a quick background. It is one of the most fundamental, well, I wouldn't say fundamental. I say you could say it was seminal. It was very influential in the field of economics, specifically macroeconomics relating to the economy of the country and the government. And a big part of macroeconomics is, of course, GDP, or basically how much your country can make within a single year. And yeah, and there's various kinds of components to it, right? So GDP is made up of consumption. So you can see here how much you're spending, how much people in your country are spending. And next, we have investment, how much people are investing into your economy, and then net exports, or basically just how much money are you, how much goods are you exporting outside. You will notice that there is no graph explaining government spending, because of course that's us, right? We get to decide how much we want to spend in terms of the government here. See, we can move the graph around. Actually, you know what? I don't think I'm going to switch the screen sharing just straight to the software. Maybe it'll be clearer. Okay, that's better, a lot better. Anyway, so as I was saying, your goal here as the government is to make GDP as high as possible, right? Now, the problem is you don't really know how to do that yet, but according to Keynesian theory, you should ideally try to increase government spending while trying to reduce taxes. So, you know, let's test out that theory. Of course, I am grossly simplifying Keynesian economics, but you know, It's a simulation. Even if we fail, we can always try again. So let's try lower taxes to about 15%, or maybe that's too much. 20% should be good enough, and increase government spending to over. Let's start with 26 billion. Now, when we click OK here, you will see that in accordance to Keynesian theory, economic growth does increase. Now, true, it comes at an increased cost of deficit at the government budget, but in the long term, theoretically, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. After all, if we have increased the economy, in the long run, we're going to have more to tax, right? So that's how the logic goes anyway. Let's look at the indicators and see what has changed. Well, not much has changed just yet, other than net exports, but that's just up to the global market, so we can't really control much about that anyway. Now, normally, we should try to tweak this every single quarter, but let's try to see what happens when we go all the way with the same kind of policy. Let's be consistent. Okay, now you will see a trend here that at a certain point, sticking to a policy will start to decrease your growth. Now, you could either try to reduce taxes even more, and then increase government spending even more, but then that could also cause in a deficit. I just want you to note that, and let's try to keep going again for another year. Oh, and of course, if you have something you want to add or ask, just interrupt me anytime. Okay, it's fine, completely fine. Right. It stabilizes. So you see, I just skipped another year, and you will see that growth rate fairly stabilized. I mean, it didn't outright spike up again, but at least it did stabilize somewhat. Let's continue again, just to see what happens. All right, it stabilized again, but at the end of the year, it kind of slows down a little bit more. And finally, right, so there it is. Within our term of the government, our performance is credited as being terrible. Overall, we have a GDP growth less than 4.2%. The average growth is barely exists. Average deficit increased terribly, while variation of GDP growth is also low. So I'm not necessarily saying that this is an accurate depiction of what the economy is supposed to be like, but I hope you don't mind me drinking. You all have already break your fast, right? At Maghrib. Okay, good.
Yep.
Right. But this just goes to show that it's a fairly reasonable thought experiment, or software, you could say. Now, do you have any thoughts or comments so far?
Well, I want to ask you something.
Go ahead.
This policy, I mean, does this applicable in, well, let's say in our own country, Indonesia? Does this fiscal policy is applicable in such ways?
All right. I will answer that, but I'm going to restart the software first. So another thing about this software is that it's kind of, I would say it's not well optimized, because you have to restart the software every single time. But it's no big deal. You can easily restart it, no problem. But to answer your question, yeah, I would say it is. I mean, it's not like this is a. So the policy itself, not the policy. I mean the economics, the theory, Keynesian economics, is actually made by John Maynard Keynes. As you can guess by the name, he's someone from the Anglophone countries. Specifically, he's British, and this was made around between World War I and World War II. And basically, his theory goes that the government can really help in supplying or stimulating the economy by spending more. And by all means, of course, it is applicable in Indonesia. But just like any other big theories, Keynes has a lot of critics. I'm also among them. I mean, I'm not a teacher, so I can be biased and opinionated here. I like to have that luxury. But yeah, personally, I also don't agree with a lot of Keynes' idea, including this one. But for the sake of theory, we're going to study it anyway. But yeah, it is applicable in Indonesia. That's not to say that his ideas don't work. They definitely do. There's empirical evidence for that. It's just that I don't believe it's good for the government to be involved too much in the economy or to be involved at all, really. Anyway, does that answer your question? I mean, yeah, you can use it in Indonesia, although I personally
Yes.
dislike it.
Yeah,
Right, good.
that answered my question. Thank you.
Right, right. Anyway, I want you guys to have a try at doing this. So what do you think we should do then to, to really bring the economy about? Just use your own personal opinion. You don't have to be theoretical.
Maybe adjust the policy every quarter.
All right, then. Let's try to adjust it. Then, how much do you think it should be? So, what do you think should the tax rate in GDP be? Should it be higher and lower? Oh, and by the way, you can see on the right side of the graph, right? Uh, you can adjust which one should be higher or lower, and by how much. What do you think?
I think the spending couple quarters should lower and the tax rates higher until the third quarter. I think, for my opinion.
All right, so let's try that. Don't worry, everyone will have their turn. All right, so growth seems to be fairly stable. I mean, it's slightly decreasing, but on the other side, the deficit is decreasing, so that's nice. What do you think we should do next?
Reduce the tax rate and increase the spending.
All right, let's try that. There seems to be a steady decrease in GDP, but there's also a somewhat increasing amount of deficit too. Is there anything else you'd like to try for the next year?
I haven't thought anything. Maybe the others can have other opinion.
All right. Anyone else think what we should do?
How about, I'm just wondering, how about increasing the tax rate and government spending?
At the same time?
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. Let's try that. So how about we set that both to 21%. We'll keep them the same. Maybe add a little bit more just to see an extra effect. Whoops. 21.5, 21.5. Nah, that should be good. Let's go. Again, another set of decrease. So for the last year, maybe there's something we should do.
Maybe Saddam have an opinion.
I guess we should increase the government spending and decrease the tax rate.
All right, let's try that. Well, all right. So everyone has had their share. I think for the most part, this how should I say it? The simulator is really is implying the message that it's good to have low taxes and high GDP, and for the most, not high GDP, sorry, high government spending, which is in line for the most part with Keynesian theory. And well, I'm not sure. Well, actually, I will say this, right? Just because the government can control something doesn't mean that they're necessarily responsible for everything. And if some of your solutions doesn't seem to work, well, don't feel too bad. After all, not everything in the economy is under your control. But let me just restart the app again. But yeah, for the most part, I think what this app is really trying to say is government spending is very important. And one thing that I would like to criticize about this app, about this software, is that it doesn't really illustrate at what point is it no longer acceptable to have too much debt. But it is useful as a tool. It's there to show you how Keynesian economics work. Now, in terms of absolute numbers, well, you can just always play around with it. Here's something I'm very curious. How about we go to the extreme? We'll see if we give taxes as low as possible, but make government spending as high as possible. Let's see how that works. All right. even after tweaking this app myself, I never really get any result higher than terrible. But as you can see, in the first year, we can see that in the first year, at least previously, that GDP growth seems to be high enough. But I think going extreme all the way is just not a feasible idea. But at least for the first 2 years, we had a high GDP. Now, I wouldn't be wasting too much of your time. Like I said, I wouldn't want to take more than 20 minutes, but I think I just want to show you that, economics can be fun. And even when it comes to mathematics, you don't really have to think too much about the exact numbers unless you're studying econometrics. But other than that, you can just take the, how shall we say it, the principles, and think of the mathematics not as absolute in terms of absolute numbers, but rather in terms of general principles. So that's what I have to say about the subject. You have anything to say or comment about that?
Actually, I have one question for
Go ahead.
Kang Sidik.
Yeah.
Are these software used in academic or only for simulator people to easier understand the fiscal policy?
Yeah, that's right. So it is really just it's not we don't even really use it in lessons. We don't really use it in researches either, because this is just a program used to teach mostly or to illustrate a point. So no, we don't really use this. And in real practice, or in not practice, sorry, in real research, we would see data, and then we would process the data using specialized tools for statistics. So now we won't be using this for academia, but it's a fun little thing to do. All right, I'm glad that answers your question. Anyone else?
Is there a reason why we didn't take a look at the indicators?
You mean the indicators from? All right, I see what you mean. So this indicator on the left tab, right?
Yes.
Yes. It's helpful, but for the most part, I'm not sure we really have to worry about that too much. Mostly because, hang on, let me try to do that again. Let me open the app again. Okay. So the reason why I don't show you that too much is because in my experience, they've always been random. I don't think the sliders really have a consistent effect on the indicators. But you know what? Let's try that for the sake of trying that. Let's see. Okay, so it increases. What happens if I increase government spending? What if an effective tax rate? All right. Let's just work good for 2 quarters. Okay, so consumption does increase, investment increases. What if I increase taxes? Apparently it does work after all. But normally in previous versions, I admit I haven't been using this for a long time, but in previous versions, it doesn't show a consistent effect. But for now, it apparently does. So as you can see from the previous 2 quarters, decreasing taxes does increase consumption, which makes sense because people have a lot of money to spend, and otherwise is also true. On the other hand, you can also see that increasing government spending increases investment, although a bit slowly. So I think you can look at the indicators, but for the most part, I think this is also a reasonably good measure without having to look at this, I think. Any other questions? Well, if nobody else has any questions, you can always catch up to me anytime. Just send me a message and hopefully I have time to answer you. But other than that, well, I thank you for coming here, and I hope you'll see that economics can be interesting and it's not just a matter of boring statistics and graphics. So that's a little thing you can consider when choosing your major when you go to university, I guess. Right then, thank you all for coming. I hope you have a good night, and thanks for coming. Bye all.
Good evening,
Baik,
sir.
Kang Sidik.
Good
Thank you
evening.
very much.
Right.